Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fourth installment of our Global Perspective Speaker Series for 2021. My name is Mark Wynn. I'm a Vice President in the International Group here at the Dallas Fed and Director of the bank's Globalization Institute, which hosts these events in collaboration with our Communications and Outreach Department. Our guest this evening is Cynthia Marshall, who has served as the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks since 2018. In that role, she has championed diversity and inclusion within the Dallas Mavericks organization. When she was hired as CEO, her vision was for the Mavericks organization to be the NBA standard in this regard. Prior to joining the Mavericks, Cynthia founded Marshalling Resources, a consulting firm specializing in leadership, diversity and inclusion, culture transformation, and overall optimization of people resources. During her 36-year career at AT&T, her dedication to diversity and inclusion earned that company a spot in the top 3 on Diversity Inc.'s 2017 Top 50 list of companies. She also spearheaded the work that placed AT&T on the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list in 2017. In 2020, Marshall received the Girl Scouts of America Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2019, she was honored with the Women of Power Legacy Award by Black Enterprise, was the recipient of the National Athenia Leadership Program Award, and was named as one of Adweek's most powerful women in sports. She has chaired a variety of nonprofit boards and is currently on the board of Dallas CASA, Dallas Regional Chamber, Texas Women's Foundation, and Texas 2036. She's also on the board of directors of BGSF Staffing and Blink TBI Inc. She holds degrees in business administration and human resources management from the University of California, Berkeley, and has 4 honorary doctorate degrees. Cynthia will participate in a moderated conversation with Rob Kaplan, who is the current president and CEO of the Dallas Fed. Before joining the Fed, Rob was the Martin Marshall Professor of Management Practice and Senior Associate Dean at Harvard Business School, which he joined in 2005 after a long business career at Goldman Sachs. About 30 minutes into our event, we will be taking audience questions. If you'd like to ask the speakers a live question, please click the raise hand icon on the bottom of the control bar to enter the queue. If you would prefer to submit a written question, use the Q&A button to submit your question to the queue. We will try to get to as many questions as possible and also try to address questions in the order in which they are received. And we apologize in advance if we do not get to your question. And with that, I will hand the floor over to Rob.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, everybody. Cynthia Marshall, welcome. I know you and I, we've talked before, you like to go by Cynt. So for those who are listening, say, what am I saying? I'm going by the name you like to be called, Cynt. So welcome. We're thrilled to have you.
Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here.
And I must say, as excited as we are here, and I am, my sons, Michael Kaplan and Alexander Kaplan, who are big Mavericks fans and fans of your organization, are also thrilled that you're here.
Awesome.
And so with
go Mavs.
Yeah, go Mavs. So with that, let's talk a little bit about your career. As Mark was just saying, you went straight from Berkeley and then spent 36 years at AT&T. Talk a little bit about how you started or how you chose AT&T and about the different assignments you had during your career.
Awesome. Again, it's great to be here. I had 13 job offers coming out of college. So that was back in the day. And I had 2 criteria. I basically said, I wanted the job that would pay me the most money because I wanted to help my mom get out of the public housing project. So I wanted to contribute financially, even though she didn't need the help. She had, I think, 3 or 4 jobs, but I wanted to help. So I want the job that paid the most money. And I wanted a job that would allow me to be a supervisor walking in the door at 21 years old. And so AT&T, it was Pacific Bell in California, had a great fast track management leadership development program that I actually was hired into. And so I started out supervising long distance operators. So it was back in the day, some people don't remember this, but back in the day where you could dial and get help. And so I started out working the night shift, supervising about 30 short evening operators. And so it was a great experience. Got a chance to work with the union. I still believe that that's the job that taught me just about everything I know about leading people. So it was a great opportunity. And then I got a chance to have line staff, technical jobs in my 13,088 days that I was there. I'm actually I'm a numbers geek. I wanted to be a math teacher growing up. I had 14 different jobs, and then got a chance to lead some very big public policy initiatives for the company and some very big technical organizations. And then when we bought Bell South and Singular back in, I believe it was December of 2006, I got a call and I was asked to move my family to North Carolina to lead our North Carolina operation in AT&T. I did that for 6.5 years, then got the next call to come to corporate because we had about 9 or 10 mergers at the time, a lot of different subcultures, and our chairman at the time, Randall Stevenson, was very focused on culture and very focused on creating a great place to work. So a few of us around the country got a call asking us to move to Dallas. And so that's what I did in 2013.
And so for a number of years, you were Chief Diversity Officer. And I can tell you in my own business career, and this is true of CEOs, many listening, this is at the top of the list for many companies in terms of priorities, how to have a more diverse, inclusive workforce. What were your key priorities as Chief Diversity Officer, and what'd you learn from that role?
You know, it was a great role for me because I started out as the Senior Vice President of HR. So I had a lot of the talent management responsibilities, hiring, those kinds of things, all the different internal operations for HR. And so then when the Chief Diversity Officer role was added to it, one of my buddies, Debbie Story, actually was in that job. And so when she left, they just added that to my job. And actually the synergies worked out great. Because if you think about diversity, it's not just about the talent pipeline, but it's about establishing a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm sure we'll talk about the differences later, but it's really focused on the talent pipeline. It's focused on your supply chain. It's focused on where your philanthropic dollars are going. How do you spend your time? Where are you recruiting? So it's looking at all of that. And it really starts with getting people to buy into the business case, getting people to buy into the fact that this is just not a good thing to do, to focus on diversity, but there is a real bottom line dividend, if you will. It's called the Diversity Dividend. McKinsey talks about it. There's a business case. I mean, you can win the war for talent. You improve the quality of your decision making. You gain more customer insight. Your employees are more motivated when they feel a sense of belonging. It really helps you with your global brand. I mean, there's a true dollar and cents impact to focusing on it. And so we focused on all aspects of it: employees, customers, suppliers, community, all of it.
So when people hear diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think many of them understand the diversity part, but they don't always understand particularly what equity means and what inclusion means. And I might have you talk a little bit about equity and inclusion and what that means and what it means to you.
I love that question, and I love to take the time to talk about it. So the way I describe it is diversity is about the mix. It's about the ingredients, and a lot of it you can see, some of it you can't see. Inclusion is about what do you do with that mix. It's about the recipe. How do you take those ingredients and mix them all together? Diversity is a fact. Inclusion is a choice. You have to decide that you're going to have a culture that's inclusive. And you've heard me say it before, and others have said it, and I didn't coin the phrase. Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. You can invite somebody to the table. You can invite me to the table as the only woman or the only Black person or the only Black woman, and just have me sitting there representing a diverse voice, but then not invite my voice in or not actually include me. You can have me there and not actually teach me the rules of engagement. You can invite me to the party and literally have me on the sideline and not ask me to dance and get involved in what's going on. And so what I like to ask corporations to do, and I know what we did at AT&T and what we're doing at the Mavs, we have a focus on both. We want a diverse group of talent. We want a variety of people at the table to help with decision making. And we really want that. We want that voice, and we will teach you to dance. We will invite you to the party, but then we'll also welcome the dance that you bring as well. So it's all of it. And then when it comes to equity and equality, there is a difference. Equality, and I don't know if you've seen the the image that has the 3 boxes.
Yeah.
But equality is about sameness. It's about giving everybody the same thing. So that image that has the people looking over the fence trying to get into the game, and you give everybody a box. Well, the guy on that left of that image didn't need a box because he could already see over the fence and get into the game. The person in the middle needed 1 box, but the person on the end couldn't see with just the 1 box. That person needed 2 boxes. So equity is about giving people what they need. And then, of course, ideally, we just take the obstacles away, which is, I think, a large part of what we're trying to do right now. But it's about sameness versus fairness.
So I'm going to stay on this for another minute longer. So on the subject of equity, one of the things we spent a lot of time on at the Dallas Fed is this issue of entrenched barriers. And so for many of us, and I include myself, I've gone through my whole life and I wasn't really aware of some of the entrenched barriers that made it hard for people to have the same opportunity. I know from your business activities and your nonprofit activities and the things you do at the Mavericks, you're very focused, I think, on that. Could you speak a little bit about your views on what are some of the entrenched barriers that actually people need to be more aware of out there as they create a more level playing field?
Oh, I love that. And I'll give you one example. An example is when, of course, almost a year ago to the day almost, we were shut down. Kids had, we're all working from home. Kids are at home trying to avail themselves of virtual learning. And there's something called the digital divide that is real, where not all neighborhoods have the kind of technology and infrastructure that they need in order to really thrive in a virtual environment. And so those are just some barriers that exist where some kids are learning and they're not falling behind. And then there are some kids in certain neighborhoods that can't learn because they don't have the infrastructure and they're
don't have Wi-Fi.
further. Yeah, they don't have it. And so, yes, we try to give hotspots and all that, but wouldn't it be great if we just had an overarching plan to address these infrastructure issues? So it's things like that. It's things like just generational wealth and money that people don't have to send their kids to college. There are barriers around just overall equity in education, where some of our kids, just because of where they live and because of the lack of property taxes that are being paid, that they just don't have money in the schools, meaning they don't have the kind of resources that they need. I mean, those are just systemic kind of issues around equity that I think are fiercely urgent that we need to address.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And we make a big point at the Dallas Fed connecting that to better GDP growth for all of us. If these fastest growing groups can have more access and we can overcome some of these barriers, it means more prosperity for everyone in the state and the country. So I think it's great. Thank you for your leadership on this.
Oh, thank you. It's something that's really important to me. I mean, even thinking about kids who are, and this is near and dear to my heart, how many kids we have in foster care, thinking about the whole child welfare system. That's huge. I mean, just right here in Dallas, I heard a statistic, and I'm not sure, I hope it has changed a little bit in the past few months, but it's a statistic that talked about, and it came out of a courageous conversation that we had at the Mavs for the community. And so we had people representing different systems. And we had Kathleen Laval there from Dallas CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates. And she told us that Black kids represent 22% of the kids in Dallas County, but they represent 46% of the kids in foster care. And so that is a disproportionality issue that we have to address. What kind of barriers are in place to cause that kind of disproportionality? Because then we know what the plight of some of those kids are. So those are the kinds of things that I'm excited that we are addressing in Dallas. We're taking on equity in education. We're taking on the child welfare system. I mean, we're taking all of that on. So I'm in Dallas, I think, at a good time.
That's great. So I'm going to shift gears. Were you a basketball fan most of your adult life?
Yes, I was. I have very vivid memories of my mother standing on the back of our sofa, yelling for a particular basketball team way back in the day. So yes, I was a big basketball fan, but not for the Mavs, but I am for the Mavs now. Yes, I had a hometown team.
So how did it happen that you transitioned from what you were doing. You had your own consulting firm. You were at ATT. You had your own firm. And then how did it happen? How did the opportunity arise?
Okay, so I was, I had retired, started my own consulting firm, and I actually started it because the chairman of the Dow Chemical Company asked me to work with them and continue some of the work that I was doing at the request of Randall Stevenson at AT&T. And so we were working with them on establishing a culture of inclusion. And so when I retired, this guy did not want to stop that work. And so he convinced me to work with him. I was actually going to take a year off and then probably go and be the president of a college. And so I took that time off, had, a couple of kids still in school, wanted to handle that. And I remember working with them with my client that morning, and it was February 21st. And I got up, Rob, that morning, and I wrote a blog post called Impact, because I was being impacted by these kids who were advocating for gun control and all that in Parkland, Florida, because of what happened there.
Right.
And then the Reverend Dr. Billy Graham had passed away, who actually had an impact on my life. And so I'm looking at these teenagers and this 99-year-old, and I'm thinking, I'm smack dab in the middle age-wise. What impact am I going to have? So I wrote a blog post, and it's out there publicly, called Impact, about what impact do we really, was I really going to have in the world at this point, post-retirement. Put the thing down. I'm on a, I got rid of my blog post. I'm on a call with my client, and my cell phone starts ringing. So my other phone, and it's just going off. And I have 4 kids, so I actually thought it was one of my kids texting me for money. And so I gave it to you know how that is. I gave it to my husband. I said, one of the kids need money, transfer it to them. And he came back and he said, it's not one of the kids. You need to call this guy back. It looks like Mark Cuban is looking for you. And I'm embarrassed to say it. Don't judge me. I didn't know him. Okay. Even though I was a basketball fan, I got 4 kids. I'm a working woman. I did not know him. And so my husband's telling me who he is. And he says, call Anthony, one of my sons. He says, he'll tell you who it is. You've got to call this guy back. And so when I ended up talking to Mark, it was a great conversation. He asked me to come and see him. I couldn't right then. And so I said, I can come and see you later this evening. And when I got to the Mavs office, it was a great conversation we had for almost an hour. And he told me about what was going on with a Sports Illustrated article that had come out regarding years of sexual harassment and misconduct on the business side of the organization, not the basketball side, but the business side. And he was very sincere and genuine about wanting to address it. So he had already launched an investigation. And of course, I ended up doing one as well. But he wanted to change the culture. And so he asked me, he had gotten my name, I guess, from a few people, and asked me, would I come on board as his CEO and help change the culture and address this and really make it a great place to work, in essence, is what he was saying. And I didn't decide in that meeting right then that I was going to do it. I told him I was going to go home and pray about it because life was good. And I had read the article on my way to see him. And I thought, oh my goodness. But 2 women stopped me, Rob, on my way out of his office and talked to me, told me their stories, and asked me if I was the person that Mark Cuban said was going to come and save them. And that's when I told him, no, I looked up and said, I don't have the power to save. I know somebody who does, but I don't. But I really started thinking about what they told me. I came home, prayed about it. I went back the next morning. I was in the building for 3 hours talking to employee after employee after employee. Mark didn't even know I was in the building. He finally found me in the conference room when he said, I guess the answer is yes. I said, yes. For some reason, I was just uniquely qualified to come in and help. And I don't take any credit for transforming the Dallas Mavericks. We have wonderful people there. But I'm blessed enough to be able to lead it.
And how you started immediately?
Immediately.
Okay.
Well, I met with him on like a Wednesday, and then we had a press conference on Monday. So he called me on that Friday and said, we're going to have a press conference on Monday.
Wow.
I said, okay, what are we going to talk about? He said, well, I'm going to introduce you as the CEO and tell him whatever you want. What are you going to do? And so I had basically the weekend, and I was actually on my way to see my mother-in-law in Fresno, California for her 82nd birthday. And I said, okay, it looks like I'm going to, on the plane ride, lay out a plan.
And so how did you spend your first 6 months in that job?
So here's what I did. When I got back that Monday, here's what I told the press, but I told our team right before then. I laid out a vision And a vision said we would set the global standard for diversity and inclusion in the NBA by 2019. Keep in mind, this is the end of February 2018. So we just had about 10 months to 9 or 10 months to get this done. That we would set the global standard for diversity and inclusion. That is the focus that I had, because I know the business case and I know we could be a successful business if we focus on that. Then I laid out a set of values that spell crafts. So our hashtag is perfect our crafts: character, respect, authenticity, fairness, teamwork, and safety, both physical and emotional safety. It was important to focus on emotional safety as well, especially considering, what had transpired in the place. And then I laid out a 100-day plan that had 4 parts to it. The first part was model zero tolerance, to really show that this is a place where we have zero tolerance for sexual harassment, misconduct, inappropriate behavior, or false allegations, and that we would put the infrastructure in place, hotlines, et cetera, training, all that, to make sure we establish a zero tolerance culture. The second piece was the Mavs women's agenda, to really put an agenda together. And we just celebrated kind of 3 years, because of course it's Women's History Month again now, that we'd have a real focused agenda around empowering, elevating, and really lifting women, putting them in leadership positions, et cetera, because we didn't have any at the time. And then we said culture transformation was going to be big for us. That's where our DE&I, our diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda came in. Great place to work focus, customer survey, employee surveys, et cetera. And then operational effectiveness. Just how do you run a business? Pay for performance, looking at market-based pay, gender pay equity, all of that, just basic running a business. And so those were the 4 areas. There were about 200 initiatives underneath each one of them. And then the 4th thing I did was I had a one-on-one with every single employee in the organization, because I really wanted to get to know them as people. And I start every one-on-one with the same question. I said, okay, the statement. I said, give me your whole life story. Tell me your whole life story. What do you want me to know about you? And then undoubtedly they'd say something like, this is my 10th season at the Mavs. And I'd say, were you born here? I want your whole life story. I want to get to know you as a person. And then I'd ask them at the very end, then we talk about all kinds of stuff, what was going on in there and all that. At the very end, I close it the same way. I'd say, tell me where you see yourself 5 years from now. And then people would lay out their dreams. And I'm telling you, Rob, as I'm having these one-on-ones, like I'm in tears. And 2 women had come in with me. And so I called them in one night and I said, I need to know if you're all in, because I am so all in with these people. They chose to have a career in sports. And I want to be all in and helping to create a great place to work. And yes, we did have to make some leadership changes.
You did.
Yes, we did. We did. Most of my team right now, they were not in place at the time. So we made some leadership changes and did what we had to do to get the right people and a diverse group of people at the table. And it wasn't easy. We had to respond to some things that I was uncovering as I was also doing my internal investigation. But we got there. And we're not perfect. But I think we are in a better place than we were 3 years ago.
And in doing all this, one of the things you had to do is get people to speak up, be forthright, not be afraid. And I assume you might have encountered some hesitancy as to whether you meant what you were saying, I guess. How did you get people to, the one-on-one meetings must have helped, but how did you get people to speak up and trust you and know that you were serious?
Well, I think transparency had a lot to do with it, and we all know that as leaders, trust and transparency go a long way. And so we took that 100-day plan and we put it on some really, really big poster boards, and we posted them throughout the office so that everybody could see what we were focused on. And then as a team, as a large team, we'd get together and have a huddle, and we would check the items off, meaning we all had to agree that we had addressed that item and every, all the sub items underneath it. So we were very transparent about what we were doing. We were very transparent about the moves. Whenever somebody moved out, I'd huddle, and without exposing anything, from an employee privacy standpoint, I would just talk about the changes that were being made, who was going to go in behind them, or if the job was open, how we would fill that job. We opened up a lot of processes. So I think people actually saw that we were doing things, and then I tie it back to some things that they told me. We would update the 100-day plan, and so they could really see things were happening. Which, of course, that's how you lose employees. If you say we have a speak up culture and we want to hear things, and then they tell you, and then you don't respond, people will stop talking. And so we did not want people to stop talking, which is also why we publicly would check the items off. And we just basically said we're all in here together. We even had a big ceremony where we all kind of walked out of the office when we checked out that last item, came back, we had our values up on the wall, our new mission statement, all that. Everybody put their hand in some paint, and our employees came up with this idea. I didn't. And, put our handprints up on the wall, basically saying this is our new place. It's a great place to work. Our new employee promise is if you work at the Dallas Mavericks, it is a place where every voice matters and everybody belongs. And we're trying to live up to it.
So just to give people a flavor, there in a normal season, we'll get to the COVID in a moment. In a normal season, 82 games. How many games do you go to a year of the Mavericks?
I go to all of the home games. So half of those, 41, I go to all the home games because that's my job. I lead the team that puts on the entire home experience. So from marketing, the ticket sale, I lead all that. Yeah. And we have some great folks. And then I try to go to, I'd say maybe about 10 or so away games. Yeah. Because of course I can't be away too much because I'm leading the team that has to put on the home game when the guys come back. So I make it to a fair amount of them, but all the home games, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I love basketball. And so then I love interacting with the fans. I love watching basketball. Sometimes I can't watch the whole game because I have to make my rounds in the arena, but I love it.
So COVID happens, go back a year ago, basically, and it becomes apparent that we're not going to be able to continue the season. How did that all unfold, and the transition to the bubble? How did you experience that, and what was that like to go through that?
Yes, it was a very different season. So we were in, when I say we, Mark and myself. So Mark is, of course, obviously the owner and the governor for the team, and I'm the alternate governor. So we're part of the NBA's board of governors. And so we were all having calls regularly, probably 2 weeks leading up to that, about just what was going on. And so we'd have to make decisions like, I remember when we made a decision to stop the high five line because we thought, okay, just based on what we're hearing around the country, that's probably not smart. So we were taking small steps, but the actual day that we shut down, and as you know, we were the last game to play that day. We had a sense that something was coming, but we actually didn't know it was going to happen that night. But we were ready because we had a business continuity plan in place like any good business would have. I learned that at AT&T. So you have that plan in place. You just have to plug in whatever the crisis is. And so when they shut down that night, of course, the very next morning, we sent our players home after the game. Mark had the press conference, and then we huddled with our folks and just said, okay, the business continuity plan is kicking in. You're going home. You have the technology you need. So we orchestrated all that. And then, so that was on the 12th. And then I remember it was Friday the 13th. It was my mom's 84th birthday because I was supposed to fly home the next day after our game. But I remember sitting in the conference room with my team and I said, okay, so we don't know how long we're not going to be playing basketball, but we are going to be playing the game of life with people. And so I know what this organization is about. I know my boss is about. We have everybody at home, they're situated. How are we going to serve the community right now? And so we talked about the different things that we could do to serve the community, and we put that plan together, and we kicked in. From a player standpoint, we tried to, our players wanted to be busy, so they wanted to participate in some of those activities, serving the community and all that. And then we just stayed in contact with the NBA. We were on calls. Safety was the number one priority. Adam Silver, as the commissioner, he didn't flinch. He said, we will not play again until we believe we have a safe way to do it. And then, of course, as you know, we ended up playing in the bubble. And so then on our side, on the business side, we have to figure out how are we going to engage the fans, keep our players visible, keep the fans excited, and we're not playing in the arena. And so that's when we started talking about all this virtual activity. Because even from a sponsorship standpoint, you still have sponsors that you have to come through for. So we had a lot to work through. But the league they were just absolutely fabulous in working with all of the teams to make sure we could serve our fans, our customers, our employees, and we were pretty much doing it all from home. I mean, we're still working from home right now. And so we had to kick into, it's interesting. I call it my new.com. I said, from a leadership standpoint, I ended up, my priorities kind of changed. Compassion was right at the top of the list. Communication was critical because now you're communicating differently. You're not in the office together. So you got to set up a whole different cadence, but it has to be a frequent cadence. Community service was at an all-time high. We had to be there for the community. Compromise was key in terms of not compromising our own health. And, me with the chemo compromised immune system, somebody brought it to my attention. We're not going to compromise our health, but we're trying to take care of everybody else because we were working around the clock. So compromise. And then, of course, compliance, just adhering to all the protocols that are very simple. Wear a mask, wash your hands, keep your distance. And so our new.com kicked in. And so that's what we focused on internally and externally.
And how do you expect this season to unfold? Or is it still too soon in terms of fans in the arena? I know we're in the middle of, and everyone on this call probably is thinking about this, flux with vaccinations, and we're not there yet. How are you thinking about this season? What do you expect to happen?
Well, we brought, we started bringing fans back gradually on February the 8th. So we had about 6 games, what I call a stress test, where we worked with the American Airlines Center and just kind of stress tested some of our processes. At the same time, we were able to honor essential workers. So we spent 6 games in February doing that. And then that last game, I think was March 3rd, we actually brought in some season ticket holders, what we call Club Maverick members. So they were able to start enjoying the game. And I think we got up to probably about 2,800, almost 3,000 fans. And probably about 4,500 is the maximum capacity right now, because we can only have about 24% fans in the arena. And so we kick off the second half of the season because, as you know, the NBA split the season in 2, and they did it on purpose because we knew we'd have some postponed games. We knew we'd have, that COVID-19 would impact us. And so they split the season in half on purpose because we didn't know exactly what would happen. So tomorrow we kick off the second half of the season, and we hope to have over 4,000 fans in the arena. Wow. And so paid fans. So tomorrow is kind of the day that we are truly kicking off. It's not normal because, of course, we normally have 19,000, people in the arena, but it's the maximum capacity that we're allowed to have right now based on current requirements. And even just having the few thousand that we've had in there in the past few games, oh my gosh, it makes a difference. I mean, you have the crowd noise, that's good, but there's nothing like having actual fans in the arena. And then, of course, we were able to honor essential workers. So that was very, very special. So I think tomorrow will be special as well.
How did you honor essential workers?
We invited them to the game for free. Okay, so we comped them, and we reached out to just different, hospitals, different nonprofits. We wanted anybody who is really an essential worker. So healthcare workers, first responders, and as you can see, I have my thank you sign in the back because we've been thanking them for about a year now. And so people who are working in grocery stores. I mean, so we reached out to our network. And we had people call in, they volunteered. We gave everybody 2 seats and said, come on. And we really focused on those who had been, vaccinated, and most of them had been, and just said, we just want to say thank you. And then you're also going to help us stress test our system. And so it worked out great.
Beautiful. So I'll ask you one last question before we go to the break. I could ask you much more. It's great to talk to you. Mark Cuban, you probably get asked this all the time. What's it like to work with Mark Cuban? What's he like? What's your experience been? He's obviously a famously engaged owner, but very active in the community. He's been very active in light of COVID. Talk a little bit about the experience with Mark Cuban.
And I know I always get close to kind of getting in trouble when I talk about it, but I don't care because, I'm 61 years old. I mean, what's he gonna do to me? Okay. So he's brilliant. And he doesn't like it when I say that, but he is really brilliant. You know how sometimes you're around people and you're like, they think they're the smartest person in the room. Most of the time, he is the smartest person in the room. He knows a lot about, obviously, the business of basketball, which I knew nothing about. So it's great having somebody who's so into it, who can help me with that side of it. His heart for the community is absolutely huge. He does so much. People think they know what he does in the community. They don't know it. I don't even know everything that he does, but I know a lot that other people don't know. So his heart for this community and heart for Dallas is huge. His heart for the country is huge. So he's always learning, and he's a continuous learner. I love that too, because I am also. And so he's always trying to learn new things and trying to figure out how we can be better as a country. And I love the fact that he's bold. He is not afraid to put things out there, to say things that make people uncomfortable. But he's also not afraid to say what he does not know. And so I've learned a lot from him. And once I heard him say that he had learned a lot from me too. So that was pretty cool. So he will say what he does not know. And so we have a good relationship. We don't always see eye to eye on everything, but we can talk through things, and we always come out in a better space. When I first started, I'm like, okay, now I don't need you like all in my business. Okay, we got this 100-day plan, and so we need to execute. And he was cool with that. But I told him, I do need you to teach me the business of basketball. And yes, we have great team members that know it. But I want to pick your brain. And one thing I love, I can call him, I can text my boss right now, as busy as he is, right, and as many companies as he's invested in, I can text him right now. He would call me back in probably 30 seconds. Right. Like I'm the only person that exists on the planet. That's huge.
That is huge. So there's one other thing, and you and I have spoken about it. There was a recent, a lot of press and some controversy regarding the Mavericks and the national anthem. And I thought I'd ask you just describe for the audience here what that was about and how you dealt with it.
Yes, that issue was about hearing from a lot of different voices when we first went into the bubble, when the NBA had the bubble last summer, and they had Black Lives Matter on the court. Players were kneeling. We had messages on the back of our jersey. Our guys had equality. And right. So there were some people who expressed concern over that and said, if we do that in Dallas, I'm not coming, or I hope we do that in Dallas. I mean, so they're probably, off the top of my head, I could rattle off 9 or 10 different views on the issue. And so as we started to plan our season, we said, we know we're not going to have fans in the arena for a while. Then we're going to have our stress test games. By the time we actually start to bring fans back to the arena, and we didn't know what date it was going to be. It just so happens now it's going to be tomorrow, March the 10th. But we didn't know what day it was going to be. We said by the time we get there, we will have a whole in-game experience laid out that will not be divisive, but it will be something that will speak to these issues, these very real issues that we have in the country. And we're going to try to speak to them in a very unifying way, the way we had our courageous conversation on June the 9th. Our theme was listen, learn, unite. So we're going to try to have an in-game experience similar to that. That will include the national anthem. But when we start the season, my boss said, okay, what do you think about not doing the anthem? So not even starting with that and letting this play out to see what happens. And then as we actually plan to have fans back in the arena, we'll have the whole experience. I was fine with that. Absolutely fine with that. So we went through 12 games where we didn't really have the anthem. We didn't really have an in-game opening. We just weren't there yet. And so when we had that 13th game, somebody realized that we weren't playing the anthem. And they asked my boss about it, and he said, no, we're not. Now, he didn't feel it necessary to tell the whole story and what the whole plan was. And so we had to respond to that because we had all these headlines. So let me make it real clear. It was never our intent not to play the national anthem for the season. That was not our intent. In fact, I had worked with some of our season ticket holders last summer, and a couple in particular said, Cyn, I'll help you once we get to the point where this is an issue in Dallas and figure out what we're going to do. And so we ended up having America the Beautiful played, flag everywhere to honor the healthcare workers. So I don't know if you saw that in our last few games. The NBA came in and said, you guys can't wait. We need you to play the national anthem.
And what was the reason you didn't play the anthem during those games was?
There was
I've read what you said, but please go ahead.
There's a lot of division. I mean, there are some people who really don't think that the words to the anthem are true to everyone in this country.
For them.
There are some people that believe that there's an opportunity to kneel during that time to bring attention to some of the racial inequities and disparities and systemic racism that exist in this country. There are some people who want to stand, but they don't want to put their hand over their heart or sing the words. And then, of course, there are some people who want to do all of that. I happen to be one of those people who stand and put my hand over my heart, and I cry every time I sing it. I cry because of a whole lot of reasons and because of where I come from. But I also cry now because I have 2 sons who aren't always safe walking around in this country. Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot that goes in that, but I still stand. I got a flag right outside my window here. So there are a lot of different views on it. And so we said, we want to have a big conversation. And I'm actually hoping, Rob, that in Dallas, because I've seen us do so many great things in Dallas, and we really do listen, learn, and unite. I think we know how to do this. I want to see us have the national conversation around this. There are some season ticket holders who have come to me, one even this morning, and said, why do we even play the national anthem? I just think it's kind of like overused. Why do we even do that before every game? So maybe it's an opportunity to address that. And I'm thinking, whoa, wait a minute, okay? Because that's not what we're trying to do. We are not trying to not play the national anthem. But what we want to do was have an even more inclusive experience, and something that would help speak to the whole issue. And we don't know the answer. But we were not going to not play the national anthem. We just weren't going to do that. But some people don't want us to. But we're talking to them and say, okay, what would be more inclusive? Do we highlight some of the things we are doing in Dallas at every game to unify and to address some of the inequities and some of the obstacles that you talked about earlier? What's the answer? How do we open up and bring Dallas together? And we don't know the answer to that yet, but we are playing the national anthem and America the Beautiful.
All right, good, Cynthia. All right, I'm going to turn to Mark Wynn, and we're going to take some questions from the audience.
Awesome.
Okay, just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a live question, just click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the control bar, and we will add you to the queue. And while we're waiting for live questions, I'll take some from the other set of questions. The first is actually from a former director of ours, Cindy Ramos Davidson, who heads up the El Paso Hispanic Chamber. And her question is, what kind of pushback did you get on your initial process for D&I? And what 2 things would you say worked to get buy-in?
Cindy, thanks for that question. There was definitely some pushback. In fact, I had one leader who told his team not to buy into any of it and don't do anything that that I laid out, because I wouldn't be there in 90 days, and none of it would make any difference if they didn't really need to make any changes. And that absolutely was not true. And so, as part of the leadership changes that I had to make. But I think so yes, we did get some resistance. And every now and then there's still, resistance. People think, you kind of go too far. But I do have to remind people, when we say diversity, that includes white men too. It includes everybody. Diversity is about having everybody included and everybody represented and everyone with a voice. And so sometimes when we focus on equity, we've got to, tilt in one direction or another. What worked, I think, was putting our employee resource groups in place. We have 5 different affinity groups where people can really have a sense of belonging, and then stressing that those groups would also have allies. And that worked even better than I thought, because I even asked, we have something called Coffee with Cyn. And so the men of the Mavs had coffee with me a few months ago. And I asked them if we needed another employee resource group, that they all feel represented. And it was kind of a pause. And then they said, well, yes, because we're all members of different groups. I mean, even like the women of the Mavs, because we're about inclusion, we're about allies, and we're all really in this together. And so it worked to have those groups in place. I think it also worked to have a diverse leadership team at the table and have a diversity underneath their tables and all that, and to really show that we had opportunity for everybody.
Thank you. Next, we have a live question from Ken Malcolmson. Ken, you're unmuted, so please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Ken.
Cynthia, how are you? It's great to see you. Great to see you. Thank you for all you do in the community. I'm sure you know that Rob Kaplan is a big basketball fan, being a native of Kansas and an alum of a Rock Chalk Jayhawk himself. So in any event, Cynthia, so good to see you. Thank you so much for what you did during the courageous conversation initiative. Did you conceive that, or did Mark conceive that? And then tell us a little bit about the outcome of that experience.
Oh, thank you, Kim, for asking about that. It's so good to hear your voice. Yes, so I did come up with that, and I came up with it because we were all having conversations internally. I was having conversations with my team. This was after, the George Floyd killing, and Mark was having conversations with the players and with the coaches. And he and I talked one Saturday night, and he was talking about what he was learning, and he was asking me questions. I was talking about what I was learning. And so then I thought about it. It was on that Sunday, and I do a whole lot in my prayer closet, okay? And I was just praying. I said, you know what? I just want us to do the right thing on this. And it just came to me that we are natural conveners, we meaning the Dallas Mavericks. And it just came to me that maybe we could take our arena and, take that plaza, be outside, socially distant, and bring the community together to have the conversation. Because with what Mark was hearing and what I was hearing, we just thought we were just in a position to just foster some good dialogue. And so we just laid it out. It had 3 different conversations. So a conversation where people could just share what it was like to be Black in this country. So we had different people talk about that, including our coaches, players, and we had an international player on there talking about just his experience kind of watching all of this. And then we had a conversation about just, welcome to my world, and just really talking about privilege. And it wasn't about white privilege. It was just about privilege. It was about people's stories and their starting points. And so then we had a discussion about stereotypes and biases. And then that last conversation was about systems. And so we are so blessed in Dallas. We have such great leaders. So we had the head of the criminal justice system, the head of public policy, the head of the child welfare system, education. So we had all these wonderful people talk to us about the state of Black America in our region. Where are we now? And where are we going? And since our theme was listen, learn, unite, we took the things they talked about and said, let's unite around an action plan. And so then we put an action plan together called Mavs Take Action, 40 initiatives. We said we would spend a minimum of $5 million, invest in 10,000 employee volunteer hours. And it's called Action, and that stands for advocacy, communication, training, investment, outreach, and noise. And you've probably heard a lot about the different investments around education and all kinds of things. And so we're just trying to quietly, as quiet as we can, sometimes we have to talk about it, work with our community leaders to take action. And then of course, we've had, we worked with the Dallas Regional Chamber as part of that to really put together a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. John Olajide, the former chair of the board, and then also Dale Petrosky, we know Dale, he's amazing, said this is going to be a priority. So the Mavs gave the first $100,000 seed to say, okay, we need everybody to step up. Let's raise $1 million and really focus on diversity and leadership, education, police reform, all of that. No place, Dallas. Nobody else is doing that except in Dallas. And I think it really did spark from that courageous conversation that we all participated in the hot sun for 2 hours on June 9th. And nobody cared that it was hot out there. We were all there as community leaders trying to make a difference. And it was a very diverse group of people because that's Dallas.
That's great.
Great.
Thank you, Ken. Next question that was pre-submitted. I love the Dallas Mavericks, but I don't believe the league should be involved in politics. What can the NBA do to bring back fans that have given up on professional sports, which I know have hurt the bottom line?
I think, and if I'm understanding the question correctly, and tell me if I'm not, this fan wants a focus on basketball, right? Is that what you're asking?
I think so. Yeah.
And so I can only give you my personal take, and I know the league has said that they are very proud of the fact that their players have a voice and that their players want to advance their causes. I will tell you, when you look at the bubble experience, we had players that were asked to work to be in a bubble. Some of them were there almost 3 months. And so a lot was going on in this country at the time they were there. And so they couldn't be at home. They weren't at home to advocate, but we weren't going to ask them to be quiet. These are grown men who care about this country and care about what's happening in this country. So I personally like the fact that the league supported, the NBA league supported what these men wanted to do to speak out on different issues. And so, and I think just because you have a job, that doesn't mean, and here's my motto around employees. We don't just work here. We don't just play here. We live here too. And so the things that are important to this community, that are important to this country, they're important to all of us. And so, yes, I'm sure there's a place where you can go too far with it because people are coming to be entertained, but you can't ask employees not to be people. And so to ask our basketball players not to be people, to ask my boss not to have a voice, to ask me not to have a voice, I don't think is fair. We are going to entertain you. We are going to give you basketball, but we are champions on and off the court. And what I like to do, I like to personally talk to anybody who wants to leave us because of these issues. And I had a lot of conversations like that last summer, and most of them did not leave because I think we have more in common than we have differences. And sometimes we need to hear from people to tell us, okay, well, maybe you ought to do it this way, or maybe you ought to have a forum. Like this national anthem issue, I want to talk about it when the season is over. I want us to have a national conversation on it. I don't want it coming up during the games. And so I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. We want your ideas. We want to get it right, and we don't always get it right. But we certainly don't want to run anybody away. But we do want to take our platform and use it for the good of this nation.
And just to follow up, I'm reading some of the things you've said in the past. I gather part of having an inclusive environment is encouraging to be authentically themselves. You might just comment on that.
Yes, and that's one of our values. I mean, that's what the A is for, authenticity. And so we can't ask people to be authentic and bring their authentic selves to work unless we like it. When we say the person who gets up out of bed in the morning is the person who gets to come in our doors, all the beliefs they have, the issues they have, the baggage they have, the ideas they have, we want all of that. And that's what authenticity is about. And we can't pick and choose what type of authenticity we want. We want all of that coming in our doors. And then as leaders, we reconcile all that and figure out how to make not just a great place to work, but how to make this a great community that we can live in, play in, and work in. And all of us are in it together. It doesn't matter what our job titles are.
Great.
Thank you. Next up, we have a live question from Helen Giddings. Helen?
Hi, Helen.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Helen, you may be on mute.
Representative, are you on mute?
It looks like you're muted.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello, Honorable Helen Giddings.
Hello, Cent. I'm so delighted to hear your remarks this evening. But you are such an inspiration to so many of us here in Dallas. You're always hopeful and optimistic about the future of Dallas. Who and what inspires you?
Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for listening in. Obviously, I think I'm inspired by my mom, and I'm inspired by just her whole journey, and us coming from Birmingham, Alabama when I was a baby, my mom, going to the church that was bombed in Birmingham. And so just her whole upbringing and just kind of the way she raised us and how she taught us to be optimistic. She taught us that, we had a chance to do great in this world, and she helped us beat the odds. And so she helped us have a great story. And she taught us that, our zip code didn't matter. And she taught us it's not where you live, it's how you live, but with God, all things are possible. And so that is what I stand on. And so I stand on the 4 words that I was taught: dream, focus, pray, and act. That have big dreams, focus on what we need to get done, pray about it, and then we all act together and make this a great world. That's what I was taught growing up in a public housing project by a mother who was kind of raising her kids in poverty. And so I'm very optimistic. Every chance I get, as you know, I try to preach the good news in terms of all of us working together and this being a great place, and we can overcome anything. That is the story of my life, is overcoming. And so I think we can do it. And especially since I've been here in Dallas, I've seen so much good. And I know we, to some degree have the tale of 2 cities and all that, but I believe we can work through all that. I'm very optimistic. I'm optimistic about life. It's my story. My story is one of optimism.
Thank you, and thank you, Helen. Next is a question from Maggie Escobar. I would like to know how, as a woman-owned small business, we can offer services to the Dallas Mavericks organization.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, you just need to call me. You need to reach out because we have a robust supplier diversity program. One of the things I put in place when I got here, I said, where is the money going? Where's our spend going? And when I looked at our purchasing spend, we weren't nearly spending what we should have been spending on minority, women, and disabled veteran-owned business enterprises. And so we have more than tripled that number in the past 3 years, and we're still not where we ought to be. And we do so much. I mean, I don't think people realize all the things we have our hand in. So I don't even know what your business is, but I would certainly love to talk to you. We are always looking for different business owners to do business with, because it goes back to the business case. There's so much creativity, innovation, and savings that can come out of doing business with diverse suppliers. So please, please, please reach out to us. I hope we can get your name later.
Thanks. Next, a question from Timothy Reynolds, and this is back to the game. How important is the Chinese market to the sport of basketball now?
I actually heard someone talking about that this morning, and so I believe it is important. We're an international team, as you know, so not just the Chinese market, but when you look at other markets, the European market, I mean, we are a global industry. And so I am proud of the fact that we have one of the most international teams in the NBA. So that market is important to us. I know we had some issues there that I don't feel qualified and probably actually can't speak to, but it's an important market to us for sure.
Let's take one more, Mark, and let's squeeze in one more question, then I'll ask.
Okay, here's a question from one of our colleagues, Sharice Sheikh. Thank you for your leadership and service to our community. I'm a big fan of the Mavs, but also a big fan of LeBron James. Will I ever see LeBron play for the Mavs?
I don't know. You'd have to ask LeBron if he'd ever come to the Mavs. I don't think about that. We've got, I was at the All-Star game this past weekend. And so I saw Luka Doncic, our superstar, playing with LeBron and others. And it was just great to see all of these men at the top of their game. So we've got Luka, we've got KP, I can't name of all of them because then I'd get in trouble. Jalen Brunson, Tim Hardaway Jr. We have our guys, the Dwight Powell. So I'm not thinking about going to LA. My son lives in LA. But I'm not thinking about going to Los Angeles to get anybody. We've got a great team. I'm
going to take a liberty with two questions. And given you mentioned Luka, I've got to ask you about Luka. I've been watching NBA basketball my whole life and basketball generally, and I've never seen anybody make the shots or even try the shots, try them and make them. What's he like? What's your experience been with Luka? What's he like? What kind of person is he?
He's just incredible. I think he is a fine young man. I am impressed so much about how humble he is, how he is always focused on the team, and how he will take things upon himself all the time. The bad stuff. I mean, he'll take it right on. And so I should have done this or I should have done that. He's just so humble, but he's all about the team. Strong work ethic. Here's what I witnessed on Sunday at the All-Star game. I was telling my team today, I was sitting there in tears because I'm watching this young man live his dream. He had a dream to play with some of those players, a dream to be in the All-Star, a dream to be in the NBA. And so I'm watching him put in the work day in and day out to achieve his dreams. It was beautiful just watching it. And he was having so much fun. He was laughing. He was into it. But he's such a competitor. He wants to win a championship. And he knows it's about teamwork. He's totally focused on the team. He's not this superstar prima donna. He's all about the team. And so we are blessed to have Luka. We're truly blessed to have all of them. We have a great team, great team of coaches, great scouts. We have an amazing organization. We got champions.
All right. So let me ask you a final question, which I often ask in closing. You've been a leader in the business world. You're now a leader of a NBA basketball team. You're very active and have been a leader in nonprofit world. You care about the community and the country. We've got on this call CEOs, regular moms, dads, individuals, nonprofit leaders, very wide cross section. What advice would you give them if they've been inspired by some of the things you've talked about tonight and want to take action and do something to help in their communities, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I love that. First of all, let me just say, I think we're all leaders. Okay, so titles don't matter. And so what I would say is be all in, what I call all in leaders, meaning lead with intent, inclusion, insight, and inspiration. So be very intentional, get you a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. So document it, lay out exactly what your role will be in that. Create a culture where every voice matters and everybody belongs, and decide what your role is in that, because it's very personal. Gather insight, take time to understand the different experiences and different perspectives and people's experience in this country and in this community, and then inspire your people to believe in this work, and inspire your people by example, by your example, to believe that we can truly, truly make a difference if we get all in. Lead with intent, inclusion, insight, and inspiration. I try to do it every day. I don't always get it right, but I try.
Cynt, it's great to have you here. Go Mavs. But most importantly, thank you for your leadership and thank what you're doing for the Mavs and in our community. And we look forward to working with you for many years to come. But thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. It was awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Go Mavs tomorrow night.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. Apologies if you submitted a question that we did not get to. You'll soon receive a survey asking for feedback on this event, and we very much welcome your candid responses. We hope you'll be able to join us for some of our upcoming Global Perspectives events in the coming months, which will feature presidential historian Michael Beschloss, Baker Ripley President and CEO Claudia Gear, Fort Worth Mayor Betsy Price, and many, many more. Details on how to register can be found at dallasfed.org. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a good evening.